Okay, so for the stack pane, this video is about the stack pane of JavaFX. I'm going to show how we can use the stack pane for something useful. I must admit it's not something I've used a lot. I've used it for some small gaming projects just for fun, but JavaFX gaming is not something that is very fluent or anything. You need special library for that or special engines for that. So just the bare JavaFX using panes and stuff for gaming is just for proof of concept or something like that. I think I did something like a Space Invader game or something in StackPanes, but I'll show you the basics of that. So for this, I'm going to delete everything I did for the last video. So I'm just going to remove all of this code here. And then I'm going to I'm just going to just going to remove that. So we'll start completely from scratch because I don't think it will make sense to use that again for this part. And also I'll just delete the wrap the BorderPane, and I'm going to put that inside an AnchorPane and then delete the BorderPane. And then I'm going to show you something. I'm going to put the StackPane, going to put that in here. So now I have a stack pane within the anchor pane. And I think we already, yes, the controller is set. So we can use that. So now we have a stack pane here. That is 200 by 150. That is fine. And everything looks basic. That's good. So let's call this one stack pane 1. Stack pane 1. And I'll create a copy of that just by Control-C, Control-V, and instead of StackPane 1.1, I think I want to call it 2, like that. So now I have one stack pane and I have two stack panes like that. So if we look at the layout part, we can see we have anchor pane constraints here. We have the layout X and Y. So I'm going to, for this one, I'm going to go for 50 here and 50 here, so it's not on top of the other one. I'm also going to give it a different color, so I'm going for properties, style, background color. I'm going to make this one blue. And then for the other stack pane, style, background color, I'm going to make that pink. And for this background color, I'm going to use light green. Ah, that's not a color. Let's go for teal, something like that. So now we have three colors that are easy to recognize. We have stack pane number 1, stack pane number 2, and we have that one, background color. Okay. So now that we have these two stack panes, we can see that stack pane number 2 is on top of stack pane number 1, and that has to do with the order they have inside of AnchorPane right now. So if we kind of switch them around, we can see that they will also change order like this. So we can put them back and forth if we want to show something. If we put them at the exact same coordinate, we could actually switch them around. We can have contents inside of this. We could put an anchor pane in here. We could put something like a VBox inside of one of the stack panes. So it's kind of just like a clear container that we can use for anything. So if I put something like a VBox inside of that, we can see that we have some stack pane constraints. We have something like alignment, and we have some margin. So that's not very different from many of the other kinds of panes. So what is different is the idea that we can kind of move them in like stack them on top of each other and have this C kind of the extra axis, not just X and Y, but also being able to stack them. So let's try to do some of that in code. So kind of the interesting thing here is that we can see that we now have these two stack panes, and if we move them around, we can actually see them on top of each other. But the funny thing is this thing works with anything. So if we go for a button, for example, I'll put a couple of buttons here. We can see that now if I move, let's put one here, 2, 3. So now we can see buttons 1, 2, and 3. If I take the first button and move it up here, I can see that it goes in. Oh, now I put it into the stack pane. That wasn't on purpose. But now we can see button 1 is behind here. If I move button 2 up here, sorry about that. It's a bit hard for me. Okay, now I put a button in a button. That's not good. Like this now, button 3 is here. If I move that slightly up, you can see it goes behind. So we kind of look at it from the bottom and upwards. So the idea behind the stack pane is actually that we can have within the stack pane, we can have different elements and we can rearrange them dependent on their order inside of the children of the stack pane. So there's not much different from if you look at the anchor pane and you look at the stack pane, other than there are some different properties that we can work with on the anchor pane. See here, stack pane, anchor pane. There's the alignment center that comes from Node. And then if we go to the layout, of course it uses the anchor pane constraints. And if we look at something that's inside of that, we don't have these kinds of constraints. Instead, we have alignment inside of the stack pane. So we can put the stack pane content top left corner, center, right, bottom. And in order to actually move things around within the stack pane, we actually need to move them around inside of the list, move them up and down and stuff like that. So I'm not confident that this can be used a lot. I tried to use it, but I might as well have used any of the others. So I think that's about it that I'm going to tell you about this. So StackPane itself can hold things that can be in different order, and dependent on their order, they will be shown in different layers. But as we can see with the anchor pane, it's the same thing. I can move the stack panes. If I move this to the bottom, it goes to the front of everything, and this is exactly the same. So I don't think there's a lot of gain by doing that, and the only thing is that instead of having this anchor pane constraints on the sub nodes, we can see for VBox we can just get this alignment thing and margin instead. So I don't think you can win a lot. It's still using X and Y layout and all of this stuff. So, but that's up to you. You can try to fiddle around with it or see if it can work in some other way for you, but I'm not sure that it's actually going to work like that. The only thing I will try to do though is I want to kind of show in here that we can move around elements of the list. So let's see which elements we have. Now I'm just going to do it for the anchor pane, but it's the same for the stack pane. So if we look for the anchor pane, we can see it has something called one stack pane here and one stack pane here. And right now, the stack pane here is at the bottom and this is at the top. So the purple one or pink one is at the front. So instead of calling this stack pane 1, I think I'm going to call stack pane purples or sorry pink. So it's easier to see from the code. And the other one I'm going to call that. Let's go for the stack pane. and call it StackPane blue instead, something like that. I'll save that, close that, and go in here, and I'll just use, for this one, I'll just use the create field and create field so I don't misspell anything. And then I like to do like this and make them private because I don't think there's any reason to make them public. Like that. So now we have the blue and pink one, and if we run the program now, we should be able to see that the pink one is on top. So if I want to move the pink one on into the back, I just need to move it around in the list. So let's just try when we let's see, when we do still have a button in here. No, I deleted that, I think. Yeah. So maybe we should put a button in there so it will react on the button. I think that would be best. So let's just open it up, back up in Scene Builder, and I'll just add a button. Just add it to the AnchorPane, and I think I'll put it here like that, so we can always see the button no matter what. And then just set the action event to click like that. And now we should be able to call that event here, call that method from that event. So what I want to do, I want to switch these two around. So we need to get a hold of the AnchorPane first, actually. So let's go for the FXML private like this. And then I need to see what the name of the AnchorPane is. I didn't give that a name, so we'll just say FX ID equals top pane. And I'll copy that into my controller. AnchorPane. And that will get injected as well. So I go to my button and I'm going to say top pane dot get children, and let's try just to print that. So we'll just make a system out print line and see if we can get like some kind of list of these children out. So if I click the button, I can see I have StackPane blue and then a button and a button and a button and a pink StackPane and then a button again. So what I want to do is I want to take this StackPane here and then move that up the C index so that it comes behind the blue one, or I can take the blue one and move it this way. So I think the easiest thing would actually just be to remove it and then reinsert it. So if I take the blue one out, I can do that by saying top pane get children, and then use the normal remove method and then say StackPane blue, remove that, and then say top pane get children add StackPane blue. So I'm taking it out and putting it back in. Try that. And I click the button and we can see it goes in front of everything, because if I click the button again, we can see now this button here that's called, it has been moved. So, or the blue one is here now, where before it was at the bottom of the list or at the top of the list. Now it goes to the end of the list. And of course we can do this in any other way if you want to. We can use other methods, like we can say top pane get children, and we can search. We can try to filter for it. We can search. We can sort them in different kinds of ways, or whatever we want to do. We can use set, and then we can use the index. So we could say, for example, set, and then we could take the top pane get children index of StackPane pink, and then we want to set the StackPane blue in that direction. So we could do something like this. We could take and say int pink index equals that, and then int blue index equals, and then basically the same thing but with the blue StackPane. And then we can kind of switch them around. So we can say I want the pink index, I want to set it blue, and I can do the same thing. I can say for the blue index I want to use the pink one. So this should also switch them back and forth. This way we can kind of move between them. And this is the same thing we do within the StackPane. And as you see, I can use, okay, I did something weird here. See what I broke. So basically what it says here is that I get duplicate children. So of course I can't have two of the same panes here. So I need to do some kind of middle thing before I need to remove it and then put it back in or something like that, or have a placeholder or something in between just to make sure that nothing goes wrong like this. I'm not going into this because I think you can figure that out. It's not that complicated, but yeah, so this is the way you can manipulate the list to your liking and move it in the C direction. Like, let me show the image here. So like you can go in this direction back and forth. But as I showed, you can do the same thing with the AnchorPane. So there's not that much of a difference between the two. This is also one of the reasons why I haven't really used it. So then we go for the last video, the most complicated one, the flow pane. So my next video will be about the flow pane.